everybody. Well, as I prepared this sermon, I had a flashback to a short-lived slogan used by the U.S. Army for recruitment. It was, "An army of one." And I went looking for what I already suspected was the reason for its demise. According to an NBC News article by Lauren Thompson, who was a defense analyst at the Lexington Institute Research Group, said that the previous slogan seemed to promote the notion that you could join the army and maintain your individualism. I quote, "If you want to be an army of one, you probably want to join the Hells Angels, not the U.S. Army." Yet even with the Hells Angels, there are times that working together, even if independently, as part of a larger plan, is the secret to success. And even the most successful homesteader needs from time to time others, even if it's the mail plane. Interdependence is a question of degrees, and it is, of course, cultural. There are cultures in Africa and on the Pacific Islands and many other places where the group is valued far more than the individual. And later we'll sing this song called, I'm going to pronounce it right, Ubuntu. Yes. Which is an ancient African word which in approximate English from multiple sources, because no translation to English from another language is completely accurate. The concept is humanity to others, or to clarify further, I am what I am because of who you are. By shorthand, we are one, linked, interdependent by degrees. Later, we're going to hear a story from our guests today about their experiences as a dreamer. We'll take a monthly special offering to support a group that supports them, and in doing so, help illustrate the way that their stories are connected to our own. We become more a part of the story by our participation in it, when we allow our lives to intersect, when we hear firsthand stories instead of third-hand stories about the lives of immigrants and others, to understand more deeply what it might be like to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. This morning, you all made your way to UUSM with many opportunities to witness your own interdependence. No matter how you got here, you had to cooperate with others at stop signs, at crosswalks. More than that, we are interdependent with those who pave the roads, maintain the signs. It goes on and on. The idea of independence certainly has its allure, but sometimes it's at least partially an illusion. Even the most isolated monk needs provisions. Sometimes we get to choose who each other is. Now you know already that the hint is out, it's stewardship season, it's arrived. And for some reason, this is the second time I've been asked to address the topic. I suspect because when it gets right down to it, it's hard to talk about money for most people. For some of you, even the word makes you a little squiggly. I see you, it's okay, it's all right. And yes, I do realize that taxes are due tomorrow. And most of us are acutely aware of our financial situation right now, and perhaps even more aware of our planning abilities. Everybody take a deep breath. Last time I spoke about this, I mused about the ways we can recognize the difference between giving and generosity and stewardship. That stewardship costs something more than a meaningful gift of money. It's time and treasure and talent and consistency. And the ratio of what we can give of these things changes in season with our lives, but over time, all these things exist in stewarding community. Most of you received your pledge packets and the pledge drive information for the fiscal year that starts in July. Hopefully you saw my email letter a little later on, and the proposed budget and your giving. These things are linked, completely linked. The budget is a policy that says by its nature where you want to go next year, and how you want to provide for the goals you're setting is the pledge drive. Many of you pledge or give annually to several nonprofits, and there are ways in spiritual community that this pledge drive is the same. but in other ways it's not. It's the same in that a pledge drive is a gift of support for a vision. It's a yes that makes achievement of a vision possible, and we give because we want to make something happen. What makes most nonprofits different than most spiritual communities with congregational systems like ours is, of course, in part structure. For most nonprofits, there's a board that sets a vision and goals and creates a budget, and a board and its executive has established all the systems and staffing patterns, and most volunteers are supervised by staff. With our gifts, we entrust to that other team of people over there most of the work that needs to be done, and the way it will be done. So once a month we take a collection for a nonprofit that's doing very important work, but only a few of us are doing that particular work directly. We, in effect, outsource it. It's a kind of lean on them, please, for this thing. And that's okay, because we can't do everything. We just can't. And we have a variety of interests in this place, and that's awesome. And this kind of giving does amplify the impact of this congregation. It's important. But in a congregational system, there's a lot more voices in the mix. A whole congregation saying where we would like to go and offering their yes. And lots of us have a piece or several pieces of that puzzle in time, talent, and treasure. We are, in effect, all hands-on, hopefully in some organized way. But the stake we hold is personal. The success of every endeavor is literally in our own hands. And our budget does not measure what the IRS calls the intangible benefits. Yet from my perspective, the love in this place is tangible. Connection, care. From a spiritual perspective, all these investments, time, talent, and treasure hold value. In a spiritual sense, giving part. In a spiritual sense, the giving part is not about the amount we give, but the investment we make in the vision, as our mission proudly states, the transformation of ourselves and others. When it comes to our financial gifts, we could take the budget, divide by the membership, and ask for $381 per month from each other. However, the spiritual approach doesn't ask for that. It demands even more intentionality. The spiritual perspective asks us to consider to give in ratio of our means, to share a load somehow proportionally, to grasp that two wildly different gifts of time or talent or treasure can cost the same to different people at different points in their lives. In a spiritual sense, a gift of $10 a month can be equal to $2,000 a month in what it costs the giver. So we're asked to give mindfully and intentionally as a way to share the load in a way that reflects our means and our abilities. And it's good to pause a minute and realize that we likely value things that from our own perspective, that we tend to take care of things that cost us more a little better. And I think that you just talked about that, Tricia, about the investment deepening our connections sometimes. How much does each of us value UUSF? I'm just getting to know you, and I think it's a wonderful place. How each of us looks at financial gifts in this place will differ, and that's okay. Some of you will find the UUA handout compelling. In the Latter-day Saints, you're actually called as whoever the head of the household to meet with an elder who tells you what your fair share will be. I won't help you with that. I give 10%, and part of that comes to UUSM as my pledge. And I made my first pledge before I started my first day, because I believe it's important to invest in community. And I invite you to start, as you enter pledging season, to have a reflect about the intangible gifts of community. For me, in gatherings like this, when I'm not preaching, they're very grounding. It's a break at the end of the week that allows me to reset. to consider my own principles and the ways I'm living into them or not. It's like a meal at a restaurant with good friends when I'm known and I know that I'm loved. It has value beyond value. If you hear nothing else today, hear this. Pledging is a spiritual practice that asks for intentional reflection. And it's not about what I can afford. It has nothing to do with what you gave last year. As much as it is a question that asks you to consider what you can invest in the shared journey unfolding now, and in what ways your gift meaningfully reflects your connection to all aspects of community, tangible and intangible. It's an investment because day in and day out, we and hopefully others, visitors too, the community around us, benefit in some way from our connection and the work that we do together, our very presence in the neighborhood. And I believe that in healthy community, when everyone does their part, consistent with their resources, and I mean that broadly, the community has enough. It will have what it needs. Your pledge helps keep the lights on and the bills paid even when you're not here. And that's vitally important. Plate giving is wonderful. It's really important too, but it's not a dependable foundation for any organization's budget. And of course, having what we need doesn't necessarily mean that we have everything we want. Still, it's important to know what we want. I've been listening a lot. What I've heard is that what you want is high quality worship, support for families to participate with an eye to growth. I've heard many of us want to turn outward to community and make a bigger impact beyond ourselves, and UUSM has a rich history of that. What you want is not fully funded in this year's budget, but it makes progress. If you read my letter, you know that according to our accountant, taking our last fully staffed year in 2021 and 22, and then adding the cost of living increases over time, inflation over time, it's pretty consistent with the budget we're offering today. And you know that I think, looking at the UU survey of operational budgets and staffing, that we're pretty much in alignment with that. I also know that there are some UUs in the area with smaller budgets. I've heard that several times. I guess my response to that is, what do you aspire to? If you had a vision for retirement, would you look at your neighbor to determine what you would need when the time came? What I'm saying is that the budget isn't shocking. We might think a little bit about what keeps us from reaching the goal. And the first thing I think is habitual giving. We often give what we always given, which of course has less value year after year, especially with recent inflation. And I know each of us is impacted by that too. But some of us will have greater resources next year, and some of us will have less. And this is what intentional reflection is about. The freedom to move with life, the freedom to give life in the proportion we have it to one another. To this day, I hold in my heart, in my deepest heart, a person who gave $10 a month at a former church. I told her she didn't need to, but she lived so close. I mean, she lived so close to the bone that sometimes she needed food assistance from our pantry. Yet it was so important to her. It was so important that she participated like everybody else. And she gave in so many ways. It cost her a lot. Yet having a place to belong changed her life. There are many things about her life. It brought her into community that saw her, that loved her, that walked her into sobriety and later into more stability and housing. Was the give and take bottom line from a financial perspective equal? No, it wasn't. But that's not what we're here for. That's not what it's about. In my heart, I hold this person who gave the most, a super large gift, double the next layer down every single month. And then whenever she heard of a need, she often did that too, but never wanted anybody to know. If I'd asked the community who they knew, who the larger donor was, 95% would have had no clue, would never have guessed. She valued community deeply, a place to rest with others as she was, to sing, to be seen and loved, and these things were worth far more than money to her, far more than any kind of recognition anyone could have given. Each loved community. Each gave proportionately. And both of these gifts, all gifts, are sacred, which is just a word that means set apart for vision and impact that recognizes I am who I am because of who you are. In interdependence, you can lean on me and I will do my part in accordance with my resources of time and talent and energy and treasure this year. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long.